And consider this your guys' warning. Continue slander. Nope.
I'm not slandering you.
Continue slander.
You said you would answer anything, Stacy. You said you're
correct,
and you're not being an open book to me. You're getting angry with me and you're not answering questions.
No, I've answered everything that you need, Brandy. I've answered everything. You still want to accuse me. You still want to do this and do that. Guess what?
I want to know why you're lying.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle. I hope you're doing well. Welcome to another video. It is Saturday morning, the 21st of December. And we're going to talk about the Michael Vaughan case today. It's a long time since I've talked about Michael's case, but who could forget this precious little boy? Who could forget him? I certainly haven't forgot him, but we've gone through long periods in this case where there's nothing new happening. Now, back in January of this year, Stacey Wondra, one of the 4 named suspects in this case, decided to come out and talk to a bunch of YouTube creators. I did numerous videos about it at the time, and then Stacey dropped off the face of the earth. Did he go to jail? I don't remember now, but he's back. He's back, and he's talking again. The trouble is, when Stacey talks, he's not that good. The other night, Stacey Wondra was confronted by Michael's mother, Brandi Neal. Brandi is an absolute warrior. If Michael is deceased and he's looking down on his mama, he must be so proud that she's fighting so hard for the truth. The cops named those suspects Stacey Wondra, his then wife Sarah Wondra, their friend Brandon Shurtliff, and their kind of friend Adrian Lucian. That was back in December of 2022. We all remember that press conference. Stacey is upset that people are calling him a suspect. He's even threatened cease and desist to Brooks from Crimes, Lines and Lights. He's warned Brandi now. Consider this your guys' warning. Stop slandering me. The thing with slander, Stacey, to be slandered, the person doing the quote-unquote slandering has to be lying. Guess who's lying? We're going to lay it all out in this video. And I don't actually have to do a great deal of work for this because back in January, I did a number of videos outlining Michael's timeline versus Stacey's timeline that he keeps getting wrapped up in knots about. I also compared Stacey's timeline with that of Brandon Shurtliff. Brandon Shurtliff spoke to JLR, Jonathan Lee Riches, a while ago now. So I'm going to play you some footage from back in January. We're going to dial the clock back. So you're going to see some clips from me back in January talking about Michael's timeline versus Stacey's and Brandon's timeline versus Stacey's. And then we're going to pick up Stacey talking to Brandi just the other night. All the links to these videos where I've got the clips from are in the description box. So this video is Stacey's lies in his own words. This is a timeline that I put together a while ago now. This is based on what the police have said and what Brandi, Michael's mother, has said. Tyler, Michael's dad, was looking after Michael and his little sister, who was a baby at the time. Brandi, Michael's mother, was at work. Around 6:30ish, Tyler went into the bedroom to change the baby's diaper. At 6:40, Tyler ordered pizza, and it was around that time, maybe 6:45, when Tyler realised that Michael was missing. So he searched the house and the backyard, and then around 7 p.m, he went outside to look for Michael in the neighbourhood. So he drove around the neighbourhood. The first place he went was the splash pad. Now, the splash pad is right here on Southwest 8th Street, and there's a little car parking area, there's a park, and there's like a water feature for kids, and Michael likes the splash pad. So Michael lives in this area here on the corner of Southwest 9th Street. So if Michael wanted to go to the splash pad, he could go up here and along here, or he could go that way, up here and along here. We know, at least initially, he went this way because Michael was seen by around 5 neighbours walking east on southwest 9th Street. We know that a tracker dog, tracked Michael down southwest 9th to the corner of Washington Street. At 6:37, a neighbour saw Michael and walked him back to his yard, but unfortunately didn't watch him go inside. That's so unfortunate. That neighbour must feel absolutely dreadful. I can't imagine. Now, in the timeline originally, the police were looking for a Honda Pilot that was seen on CCTV near the splash pad. They were also looking for a man who was seen on CCTV, but I don't know whether either of those are still in play. So Tyler got to the splash pad at 7:02 according to a surveillance video, and then after that time he continued to search the neighbourhood. He rang Brandi and then couldn't find Michael, so called 911 at 7:21. The police state that the window in which Michael would have gone missing or been abducted, because the police believe this was an abduction, was between around 6:40 and 7 p.m. So it was between the time that the neighbour took Michael back to his yard and the time that Tyler went outside to look for him, and Michael was gone by then. I'd like to get more precise times for these neighbours, like I've put it between 6:37 and about 6:45, but I'm wondering whether they saw Michael a little bit before and the 6:37 sighting was actually the last time Michael was seen by anybody rather than the first time he was seen by anybody. I probably think that's the last sighting based on the police's 6:40. Okay, so that's Michael's timeline. And again, Michael lives about here. A tracker dog went this way, and this is Washington Street, tracked him as far as Washington Street. So you would think that Michael was picked up on Washington Street, so as he was heading to the splash pad. But that's not necessarily true. Okay, so bear that in mind. All right, so now we turn to Stacey's timeline. Now, as I said, Stacey has been talking. He's been on the news earlier this week on KTVB, wanting to clear his name. Said that he had absolutely nothing to do with this. You know how it goes. However, it's interesting that in the interview with Morgan Romero, he didn't mention the child that he saw. But the news did pick up on the fact that he'd spoken to YouTubers, and he told Brooke from Crime Lines and Lies that he saw a child. But it was way before Michael went missing, and it was not Michael, because this child had dark hair and was, maybe originally 4 or 5, but then maybe more like 9 or 10. Okay, because his story's changed a little bit. Because not only has he spoken to Crime Lines and Lies 3 times and then flounced when he realised that Brooks was asking him difficult questions, he's also spoken with Dolly Vision, did an interview with Dolly Vision a couple of days ago. He's spoken to True Crime with Eve. Now, this is interesting. Brooks reviewed Dolly Vision's interview with Stacey and showed this picture. This is Adrian Lucian in Nampa. We think it was Nampa. This is July 27th, 2021 at 4:47 p.m. This time is important, 4:47 p.m. Earlier in that day, Sarah, Brandon and Adrian had gone to Nampa, I think, to see Adrian's child. Now, Nampa is down here, 38 minutes, so about 38 miles, from 1102 Red Wing Street, which was the Wondras' home. It was that house where they dug the backyard up in November 2022. After Stacey went in jail on unrelated charges, said that Michael had been buried in the backyard. near the shed. But now he denies that. He denies that that's true. And he said he just said that just cause. Just cause.
Convince me otherwise.
Stacey, why did you tell law enforcement that you knew?
I didn't say that I knew. I wanted to get them off my back. And maybe if you did a little studying and research on what fetal alcohol syndrome is, and maybe if you had it and you got put in a pressure point situation, you'd do the same fucking thing.
I do have a slight medical background, and I'm quite aware of fetal.
Then you'll understand that being put in a very
understanding.
pressure pointed situation,
Yes,
in a
that's
very
why I'm
pressure
talking about
situation, you would do
this.
everything you can to
So I
fight
can
or
get the
flight.
difference from you without you being an explosive asshole.
Okay. Yep.
Stacey spoke to Brooks and gave a rundown of what happened on the day Michael disappeared. From his perspective, they were all home in the morning, and then around 11ish, he got a taxi call. Him and Sarah ran a taxi business. So he got a taxi call to take someone to Boise, which he did.
Probably I left the house about 12:30 or 1 in the afternoon, and took the Lexus that we had to go pick the client up and transported him to Boise. And I hung out in Boise, I think, for a few hours and then came home. Neighborhood seemed subtle and quiet. There's not a lot going on. Nothing seemed unusual at our house. Nothing was off.
Meanwhile, Sarah, Adrian, and Brandon went out. And here we can pick up what Brandon said. In November 2022, Brandon, looking cool, calm, and collected in North Dakota in a hot tub, spoke to JLR, Jonathan Lee Riches. He said that him and Sarah dropped Adrian off at Applebee's, where he was going to go and see his family. He's originally from California. And sidebar, it's interesting that whilst Stacey was talking to Brooks, he said he got a call from California. Was it Adrian or one of his associates trying to tell him to shut up? Sarah also called him during that conversation with Brooks. I just find that interesting. He kept getting calls. Reminds me a bit of like what happens to Don Wells when he talks to people. People who want him to shut up keep calling him. And that seemed to be happening to Stacey. Anyhow, let's continue.
Stacey was home left alone and did something and maybe like went out and snatched Michael. I mean, how do you guys know about Stacey's whereabouts at the time?
I personally don't. So I'm saying that could be a possibility.
Because there was no one else there with him, correct?
Right. Yes, sir.
But you're saying that you were with Sarah all that day. You and Adrian and Sarah were all together throughout that whole day, starting in the morning. And you didn't she didn't go off on her own or do anything?
No, I was with Sarah that whole day and Adrian. And then Stacey was left home alone.
Stacey was left home alone. When you guys were out, what cars were there with Stacey?
I think he had his little Cadillac Escalade that he cruised around at that time.
What color was that?
It was a white one, an older one that he traded his pickup in for. That when that pickup started to have a couple issues, instead of getting it fixed, he just traded it in.
Yeah. See, because he's left alone and no one else is there with him. I wonder if he ventured out. Yeah. Okay. For instance, when you guys got back, was he in the house?
Yeah, he was in there. He was in there on the couch. I'm pretty sure.
What was he doing?
Just watching TV.
Like he never even went anywhere.
Right.
Stacey went on to say that they then went to Brandon's mother's house to tow back Brandon's vehicle, and then they got back to the neighbourhood and saw all the cops and people searching, and they stopped and asked what was going on.
Sarah and I were in the truck, and we towed his vehicle all the way back to Fruitland. When we got back, we noticed that there was an exceptional amount of police officers and people just walking around. And I told Sarah to pull over. I was like, let's find out what's going on. And we rolled the window down and we asked them, what's going on, what's happening. And they were like, well, a little boy was abducted. And we're like, what? It made no sense because everything was at peace.
Who did you ask?
I don't remember. It was a police officer that we had talked to that was walking up the road from the main strip, 8th Street, which is, you took 8th Street led you into our subdivision. We lived in a whole different subdivision than Michael Vaughan. Michael Vaughan lived on the opposite side. He lived on 9th Street. We lived off of, I think it was called Pintail Avenue or something like that. I don't remember exactly what the street that led into our subdivision was. It's been so long, but we stopped and asked, what was going on, and they told us, and we're like, that's really weird. And I was in the process of trying to get Brandon's car detached from my truck. And Brandon and Sarah had gone and looked for Michael while I was doing that. I offered to go help. They're like, no, we'll just go out and do it. And I was like, okay. So they took off on foot.
It's not what Brandon said, though.
I asked them earlier that day if we could use their pickup to go to my house, my mom's house, and get my Mercedes-Benz and tow it back over there so I could work on it if I was going to be hanging out over there doing the taxi business.
Yeah. So when did you guys go over there to get your car?
I think it was around like 6 or 7 at night.
6 or 7. Then you're saying while you're coming back, that's when you noticed everyone searching for Michael?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I remember going to the gas station. We were probably at the gas station filling up like right at 7.
Right at 7. What gas station?
There's the Chevron right there just up from their house.
Yeah. So where you were seeing people out there looking for Michael, or you were seeing police?
I was just seeing police cars cruising around, and I was seeing a lot of like the neighbors going out in their cars cruising around, and just like the whole subdivision from the left side to the right side. They were all just out, everybody walking around and looking, and flashlights, search and rescue was there, police, everything.
But how did you know they were looking for Michael?
Because so when we were pulling into the subdivision, Sarah was driving the pickup, and she stopped and talked to the neighbor that was coming down the road the opposite way.
Mm-hmm.
And she stopped right there in the middle of the road, and they both opened their doors and they started talking to each other right there.
Okay. And you told me you never seen Michael Vaughan before in your life prior.
Right. I never met him or his parents ever before. I just know that they're neighbors of where I was staying over there with the Wondras.
Brandon said they went to the gas station and got milk. So there's quite a contradiction there in what happened in that hour where Michael went missing. If you remember, there's only a 20-minute window between around 6:40 and 7 p.m. when Michael could have been abducted. That's the time that he's unaccounted for. So it's interesting that there's a completely different story between Stacy and Brandon. I find that interesting. And Stacy went on to say that Brandon's lying about going to the gas station for milk. I think the gas station's like up here somewhere. And he said that was just about 7. Okay. Just about 7. That put them around here, right at the time that Michael disappeared. Stacy said that they set off at 5:30. So they would have been putting power steering fluid in here between 5:30 and 5:40. Well, how come it took them then an hour and a half to go to the gas station to fill up? And Stacy said they didn't go to the gas station at all. But Brandon said they went to the gas station. So this is, at this point, they saw the child, who's not Michael.
I was never searching for anybody. We were gone, and GPS data shows that we were gone. We were not even home around that time.
But you said you were putting in power steering fluid at 6:48 p.m.
No, 5:30 p.m. How else would CCTV video footage record us? At 5:30 p.m. on 8th Street, parked off to the side. Like, you guys know, like, I've already seen all the CCTV video footage from the detectives directly.
Uh-huh.
So, like, you're not going to, like, trick me into knowing what I already know and what I've seen from law enforcement.
I'm not trying to trick you. I want the answers. I want my son.
I've given you the answers, and I know you want your son. And if I could give you your son, I'd fucking do it.
Well,
but don't try to tell me that my information's not accurate.
Officer, come on now.
Okay, well, don't try to tell me that my information. Okay, well, I'm not going to tolerate being criticized and ridiculed when I'm giving my. I'm not disrespecting her. Okay, but I'm not going to tolerate being disrespected as well and being ridiculed and criticized when I'm telling you that I know exactly where I was at 5:30 p.m. along with Brandon and Sarah, because we were all in the truck.
And
I ask you to stay respectful. So
Adrian,
stay respectful, please.
Adrian was at the house. That's right.
So we're going to Cuna to pick up this vehicle. Also, Brandon had to do some washing. He had to wash his clothes. Took some clothes in a duffel bag to his mother's house to wash. So we went all the way to Cuna to wash some clothes in a duffel bag that wasn't big enough to fit a human in. Okay. I've got a problem with this. Because they set off at 5:30. It would have meant that Sarah and Brandon literally set off as soon as they got back home, because they were still in Nampa at 4:47 or wherever they were. So they just got back and then set off straight away. Or, as Stacey said, did they wait an hour and a half, and maybe set off at 6:30 or 6:45 maybe? And that's right the time when Michael was out there on his own. What if they stopped here and saw Michael? So Stacey's lying about the time. Brandon isn't, because Brandon doesn't realise. Stacey's way ahead of Brandon. Stacey's lying about the time is also lying about the child.
And according
at 5:30 p.m., I was shown by law enforcement when they started questioning me specific video CCTV footage, exactly like I said. of being outside, getting out of the truck. Sarah was driving. I was in the passenger side, and Brandon was in the back seat. And I had Sarah pull off at 5:30 p.m. This is verbatim from CCTV video footage from the police department.
Were you at the house when Adrian came back from Applebee's?
No, Sarah had gotten back with Brandon and Sarah and Adrian had gotten back right
I
at, or
saw
before
the
I
red
got back
truck
from the house.
and you guys leaving at 7:08 p.m.
No, GPS status shows differently, and I've already turned that in too. And law enforcement showed me video footage. They don't just adjust time frames at 5:30 p.m. exactly like I have said.
The timestamp was 7:08.
No, it wasn't. I've seen the time.
So are you telling me I'm a liar?
I'm telling you, information gets modified.
You're
I'm telling you what
the FBI modified that to the mother of a missing child. They're going to waste those resources to protect.
Okay, well then explain this, Brandy. It's 3.5 years.
They showed me too.
Okay, cool. And guess what? It's 3.5 years. They quote unquote said they have such solid concrete evidence, right? Yeah. Solid concrete evidence that it's 3.5 years later and there's still no charges. You wonder why? Because they don't got anything, Brandy. Figure it out. Do them. No, they don't. Really?
And I know you're lying, Stacey. And
really?
You know what? I would forgive you if you could tell me the truth about Sarah.
I don't have anything to fucking give you. I don't have anything to give you. And if I had something to give you, I would. I'm sorry that you still obviously think that I'm a liar and this fucking horrible person.
I've caught you.
Your prerogative. It's your prerogative. Guess what? It's your prerogative. And you're entitled to feel any way you want. But don't think for once. You're right, you are. But if I had something else to give you, I would.
Because I'd like to know why Brandon says you're lying and you say Brandon's lying.
Really? Because Brandon didn't say that I'm lying. And actually, I listened to his statement that Brandon, from his lawyer specifically, that Brandon's lawyer was retained to represent Brandon should he ever get charged. I heard exactly the whole statement from his lawyer and what Brandon told. And Brandon's statement confirms everything that Sarah and I told.
This is Michelle in the present now. Except, Stacey, it doesn't. Unless Brandon told law enforcement something completely different than he told JLR. Let's recap. Because it seems to be that Brandon is blaming Stacey, but Stacey is blaming Adrian. Because he says that Adrian was home alone in the house that night. However, the screenshot from outside Applebee's of Adrian with his child is dated at 4:47 p.m. And Nampa is, 38 minutes away. So even if they set off right after they took that photo, and who took that photo? Who took it? It had to be either Sarah or Brandon, because they were with Adrian that day. So even if they set off for Cuna right after they got home, leaving Adrian home alone to abduct a child an hour later, Brandon's story doesn't match with Stacey's story. Stacey thinks they set off at 5:30, which is a whole hour before Michael was even out on the street. Brandon thinks they're at the gas station down the road at 7, which puts them right on 8th at the time Michael would have been out there on his own and the time unaccounted for. They're all lying. Now, we've never heard from Adrian. So if Adrian would like to come forward and give his side of the story, maybe he can clear up what time they got home after that photo was taken at 4:47. Did he stay in Nampa? Did he go back home with them? Was he home alone that night? Does he have anything to do with it? Because he's a named suspect. So it might be in Adrian's best interest to come and, clear that up. Because Stacey thinks that Brandon's story checks out with his own. Well, if Brandon's story checks out with his own, his story is wrong. Dear me. But Stacey has a problem with a little bit of an explosive temper, and he flounces, he rage quits, and this is exactly what he did in this interview. When the going gets tough, Stacey gets going.
You care about getting away with this.
I'm such a horrible person.
You care about getting away.
I'm sorry. This is over.
Because you can't tell me the truth. You can't.
I don't have truth to tell you.
You do.
No, I don't.
You know where Michael is.
No, I don't.
You did know.
No, I don't.
Yes, you did.
No, I don't. No, I don't. No.
Let's let Brandy talk, please.
So
Go ahead, Brandy. Guess what? They can bring charges because guess what? And they can hold me to the fucking. Go ahead. Bring charges, and it's gonna get fought in court because they don't have shit.
Knowledge.
No, I don't. And consider this your guys' warning. Continue slander. Nope.
I'm not slandering.
Continue
You
slander.
said you would answer anything, Stacy. You said you're
Correct,
an
and
open book, and you're not being an open book to me. You're getting angry with me and you're not answering
no,
questions.
no, I've
And
answered
you're
everything
not.
that you need, Brandy. I've answered everything. You still want to accuse me. You still want to do this and do that. Guess what?
I
Go
want to
ahead.
know why
Go
you're
ahead.
lying.
I'm not lying.
You have
I want to know
control
why you
issues,
think.
okay? You have control issues.
No, I
And
don't
you
have control
imposter.
issues.
Yeah.
I have issues with people slandering me and defaming me and
It's like
thinking
you
that they have and thinking that they're
something
hot
that
shit
bothers
and
you a
thinking
little
that they
bit,
know
you
it all.
explode in
This
something.
conversation is done. Y'all have a good night.
Obviously, he's still gonna listen.